It was the night before Roshana, and I was leaving Brooklyn. And I was driving back to Lakewood, because in those days, I was still commuting every day, every Shabbat to Lakewood, from Lakewood to New York. It was the night before Roshana. I finished giving a Roshana class. And after our beat, I went out to my car to leave. A gentleman by the name of Rico, the guy that runs the CDs in the Syrian community, he comes running up to me and he says, "Rabbi, before you leave to Lakewood, wait." And he hands me about 300 CDs of different classes of the last few years of mine. And he says, "You're going to Lakewood anyways? Do me a favor. It's right before Yom Hadin. This is the time that people are listening. When you get to Lakewood, just put it out in a few shuls. People would like to hear it." I said, "Okay." I take the 300 CDs, I put it in the passenger seat right next to me. I start driving out that night to Lakewood. The last memory I had that night was a police officer's face as he stuck his head into the driver's side window of my car and looked at me straight in the eye. And he said to me, "Are you alive?" And I said, "Yeah. Why not?" You see, I didn't know that night on the Garden State Parkway, as I was going about 80 miles an hour, the car, somehow or other, I have no clue till this day how, the great chesed of Borei Olam, the car went off the highway and dropped 104 feet to Washington Avenue that runs underneath the Garden State Parkway in Sayreville, New Jersey. The car hit concrete and kept going. Toyota Camry, huh? And it was only further down that road that the car finally wrapped itself around the divider. At the time that the police, volunteers, tow truck, everyone showed up, they didn't even call an ambulance. They said, after looking that there was nothing left of the car, they said, "This is all about paperwork. There's no physical possible way that anyone can survive that drop at that speed." And there really wasn't anything left of the car. Maybe I should have brought in the pictures. I didn't even know I was going to say this tonight. But maybe I should have brought in the pictures from the insurance company, who on insurance terms, they call this a total loss. Where the back of the car and the front of the car was completely crunched in like an accordion. And the only thing left to that Toyota Camry was the front seat and the passenger seat. And that's it. They sat there for 15, almost 20 minutes. And they just waited, filling out paperwork, till one lady, volunteer from Sayreville, suddenly gives a scream. And we know the story from the tow truck guy, who tells it over later on to one of my family members. One lady volunteer says, "Hey, there's somebody moving in that car. There's some life there." And the cop said, "What?" The cop ran up to the car, broke the passenger side window, stuck his head in, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're alive?" And I looked back at him and said, "Yeah, why?" I didn't even know I was in an accident. And a moment later I blacked out again. That's the only memory I have of that night. The next morning I wake up in Robert Wood Johnson Hospital in Sayreville, New Jersey. And I look around my bed and I see all my guys from the shul, all my talmidim, my parents, my in-laws. And just then, my brother comes walking into the hospital room. He's coming from the junkyard. He went to the car to get my tefillin because he was in the car with me. He came to the junkyard, and the tow truck guy, the head of the junkyard, he comes running out and he says, "What are you looking for?" And he tells him the type of the car. He says, "Oh, that was last night's crazy accident. My condolences to your family on your loss." My brother said, "What loss?" "He's alive." The guy says, "What? What do you mean he's alive? There's no way that you can be alive." He says he went 80 miles an hour and dropped 104 feet. He says not even a stuntman could survive such a drop at such speed. He's alive? He says, "Yeah, he's alive. And I'm coming right now to get his religious articles from the car. My brother goes over to the car, whatever was left of it, just basically the driver's side. And he tells me that when he literally climbed into the car to get my tefillin in the seat right next to me, he says he saw these sparkling type of, it looked like diamonds all over both seats. He says, now, it wasn't glass. So he was asking me, what did you have in the car that was sprinkled all over the seats? It looked like when I went in, it was covered with these sparkly diamonds. What was it? I'm thinking to myself, what? I don't know. And then it hit me. Right, the night before when I left Brooklyn, Rico gave me those 300 CDs of all the different shiurim and classes. And I put it right next to me in the passenger seat. I said, I know what it is. After the drop, after the bang up, those 300 CDs were broken to smithereens, spread all over those two seats. And he says to me, yeah, they were gone, destroyed, crushed, except for one. And he reaches into the bag and he pulls out one Pach Shemen, one CD. And he shows it to me. And I look at the title of the CD, not even a scratch. And it says, where is your bulletproof vest? Where is your pair of tzitzit? And I realized that night what took place. Yeah. I fell 104 feet at 80 miles an hour. But Borei Olam caught me in a pair of tzitzit. A shmirah that money cannot buy. And when I got to that hospital, after MRI, after MRI, after MRI, the doctors couldn't believe it. I came out of that situation with a sprained thumb. Erev Roshana, Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. And gentlemen, I came here tonight to tell you, Kol atzmotai tomarna Hashem mi chamocha. Every bone in my body is screaming, who is like you, Hashem? Because there's no explanation other than a pair of tzitzit and Borei Olam that those bones were still intact. Can I please just share this with you? You want to hear something incredible? I didn't come here to tell you this tonight. All of this was just because I mentioned the Sudat Todah. I want to tell you I have a Sudat Todah coming up in 2 nights. You're in Brooklyn, Tfadalu, 2219 East 7th. I mean it. We open the house to everybody to come and be mitorer biyachad the night before Roshana on this incredible Sudat Todah. In the hospital, there was a lady in the next bed, and there was a curtain between us. She was an Indian lady, there with her husband. And I remember that the doctor comes walking in, and the doctor walks up to her bed and he says to her, ma'am, don't worry. Although the first operation didn't succeed, but the next operation is going to work. And I'm convinced that you still have a 50% chance of walking again. But don't worry, this time we're going to do it right. This operation, well, after a metal plate and 2 bolts and 2 screws that we're going to put into your leg, it's going to hold up your knee. You'll be able to walk on it again, most probably. I would say 50% chance. It's worth taking the operation. And the Indian lady starts crying, and her husband gets emotional. And then the doctor walks out, cool as a cucumber. And I turned to the husband of this Indian lady and I said, wow, Hazita, the poor woman, she might not ever walk again. I said, what happened to your wife? Well, she must have been in a terrible accident like me, right? He says, well, not exactly. I said, what do you mean not exactly? She's on her 2nd operation. She might not walk. They're putting in a metal plate with bolts and screws. For heaven's sake, what happened? So I'll tell you what happened. A few days ago, one morning, my wife got out of bed in a bad way, and she fell right off the mattress. And she landed on her knee on the floor. She shattered her knee and her leg. I said, really? That's the fall she had? what, a foot and a half off the ground. She shattered her knee, she shattered her leg, and then I said, wow, Borei Olam. Kol atzmotai tomarna mi chamocha. This lady fell out of bed a foot and a half off the ground. She's on a second operation with bolts and screws and metal plates and ulai, maybe she'll walk. I said, Borei Olam, 80 miles an hour. You set me off a 104-foot drop. Baruch Hashem.